And now, on a pale horse. Chapter 11. Satan's Case. The death watch caught his eye. It had clients backlogged. "Sorry, no action today," Zane murmured. "Or for some time to come." They arrived at his mansion in the sky, and Zane dismounted. "I think you'll have a week's good grazing, Mortis," he said. "You've been a perfect steed, and I wish you the best." The gallant stallion nickered appreciation, shook his body to make the saddle vanish, and headed toward the pasture. Zane went to the house. The household staff took care of him as always. Zane had a good meal, a shower, a change of clothing, and felt much refreshed. He settled down to watch the news on television, knowing it would be brimming over with his latest scandalous behavior. Everything seemed fine except for two things. He missed Luna, and he was apprehensive about his future. He knew he faced no easy time. It wouldn't take Satan long, if he had not listened in on the hot smoke scene, to realize that Luna had not arrived in hell on schedule. "Good evening, Death," the urbane announcer said from the screen. "I dislike intruding on your well-deserved privacy, but there seems to be a misunderstanding." Zane peered more closely at the face. The man's complexion was dark, with a red tinge, and two small horns projected from his temples. "Satan!" he exclaimed. "At your service," the Prince of Evil agreed, inclining his head politely. "Do you have a moment?" Zane sighed. Already the dread encounter was upon him. Satan was affecting politeness, but he would have his say no matter what Death did. "I refuse to send Luna's soul to hell," Zane said firmly. Satan laughed. The sound was mellow and good-humored, as if he were enjoying a joke on himself. "To hell? My dear associate, she need not come here. I'm sure she will be welcome in heaven after her several meritorious acts." What was this? "You don't want her?" "I want only what is due me, Death. Luna is a good woman, regardless of what the record may indicate. I can personally guarantee she will not come to hell. I have no use for her kind here." "Then why did you slate her for untimely demise?" Zane snapped. The devil's lips quirked. "I must confess there is a bit of awkwardness coming up. I see no reason to involve such a lovely and good woman in that matter." "So you're killing her early?" "I merely seek the least painful way to alleviate a difficult situation. I regret that this may cause you personal distress, Death, but I am quite willing to compensate you." "How can you compensate me for the loss of the woman I love?" "My dear sir, my organization specializes in compensations. If it is the delights of the distaff flesh you desire—" Satan gestured off-screen, and a truly beautiful brunette joined him. "My dear, show my esteemed colleague your offerings." The woman smiled dazzlingly and unzipped her blouse. A phenomenally full and rounded bosom emerged, untethered by a brassiere. "She's a succubus," Zane said, catching on. "Naturally. I could provide you with your choice of the human beauties of history, most of whom now reside in my domain, and any of whom would be overjoyed to delight you eternally. But you would have to come to hell, for they cannot return to earth in their original bodies. I assume you prefer a creature who can cater to you in life. These highly specialized creatures, the succubi, can entertain you anywhere." Zane was silent, taken aback by the sheer audacity of the offer. Satan thought he would accept a female demon in lieu of Luna. "This one, for example," Satan continued blithely as the woman shape continued to strip. Note her fairness of face and fullness of feature. You can't match that on Earth." Zane found part of his voice. And that's not all," Satan said quickly. The succubus was stepping out of her skirt. She turned about as Satan touched her arm, showing her plush buttocks and thoroughly fleshed thighs to the eager close-up camera. "But that's not—" "Ah, but it is," Satan said enthusiastically. "It is eternal. Living women inevitably change and fatten and age, but a she-demon's flesh never atrophies. You need have no concern at all about degradation of form." He slapped her right flank, and the ripple of flesh proceeded in measured stages across the right buttock, through the left, and down the thighs, before reversing like a wave at the edge of a pool and returning to the point of impact. "Eternal," the evil one repeated softly. "You don't understand," Zane said, keeping his voice steady, though his eyes did feel somewhat bugged out. "I don't want a voluptuous succubus. I want Luna." "I can provide you the form of Luna," Satan said. "Form is the least part of a woman." He gestured, and the demoness misted and reformed, turning to face the camera in the exact likeness of Luna. It was eerie, for no detail differed. The hair was just as brown and flowing, the eyes just as grey and deep. If Zane didn't know better— "But her mind," he said doggedly. Satan frowned. "There, I confess, is a problem. Intelligent conversation does require a mind. Most men prefer their females without minds of their own." "All of which is beside the point," Zane said, gaining confidence. The Prince of Evil couldn't deceive someone who was alert, he hoped. "I love Luna for herself, not just her form. She has done some very generous things, very brave things, and is a wonderful person, and she is going to stop you from interfering with the world 20 years hence. That's why I will not remove her soul from life." Zane was afraid he was saying too much, but couldn't help himself. "A commendable attitude," Satan said mildly. "One should always promote the welfare of one's situation and one's friends. That's enlightened self-interest." Zane was surprised. "You agree?" "Of course I agree, Death. I am the deity of self-interest after all. But one does have to be careful how one defines the term." "It's not copulating with succubi," Zane shot back. "That depends on one's viewpoint. You really should try it before condemning it. Your girlfriend did." "That's a lie," Zane snapped with sudden heat. But he realized as he reacted that he shouldn't. Satan was cleverly pushing his buttons, pushing him around emotionally, getting him off balance. Too much of that, and the devil would have him reacting exactly as he wanted. Zane reminded himself that the hot smoke dragoness would not have started to consume Luna if she had not been physically virginal. He hardly needed to argue the case with the devil. "Naturally I am the father of lies, a title I carry with pride," Satan responded equably. "Truth is only as each person sees it. There is no absolute standard of integrity. That is why I often find it necessary to depend on reason to convince skeptics of the validity of my case. Pay attention to my logic, and you will have no need of further verification." "Maybe," Zane said shortly, distrusting this. "You choose to interpret Luna's physical virginity as the whole of her purity. Are you sure you are not deceiving yourself thereby?" What a silver tongue the devil had. He was personable and agreeable, and presented his case in positive terms. It was hard to resist his charm. Zane had somehow anticipated a glowering, smoky horror mask issuing terrible threats. Yet he reminded himself the evil was the same, regardless of the image it projected. "I know she was raped by one of your demons," Zane said. "I know that rape was psychic, not physical. I know it imposed a heavy load of sin on her soul, but I also know she did it to try to learn magic to help her father. On the record she may have much sin, but as a person she's good. Unquestionably, and very intelligently answered, Satan said, as if addressing a precocious student. He patted the succubus on her bouncy bare bottom, and she moved off-screen. There is nothing quite as commendable as the sacrifice of one's soul, one's own immortal soul, for the good of another, however that good may be defined. By that measure you yourself are a much better man than your record indicates. Luna is certainly a rare creature. Then why are you hounding her? Zane demanded, though this was mostly rhetoric. He knew the answer and had already charged Satan with it. But he had to say something to help himself resist the tide of gratitude that threatened to undermine his cause. Satan had complimented him, as well as Luna, for a matter that was fundamental to Zane's self-image. Satan had justified Zane's treatment of his mother. How much easier it would have been to fight a ravening monster. Satan laughed again, sounding like the most pleasant of companions. My dear incarnation, I am not concerned with good. Evil is my bailiwick. It is my eternal duty to define and chastise the evil in man. Surely you agree this is a necessary chore. Yes, but there is an enormous amount of evil in the world, the urbane figure continued persuasively. Left to itself, that evil would soon corrupt the entire society, like milk going bad. It has to be disciplined. The evildoers have to be punished, and to know that punishment is inevitable and in strict accordance with their offenses. In fact, the entire society has to be advised of the consequence of evil action. Only in that way can man, as a species, be improved. This was a compelling rationale. But Luna, you admit, is not fundamentally evil. Why should she be punished? My dear associate, Satan said with another warm and tolerant smile, as a benign father might address a bright but errant child. We agree she is not evil, and of course she is not to be punished. She is to be sent directly to heaven, where she belongs. Surely you do not object to that. To heaven? Zane asked blankly. You agree to— I only want what is mine. Luna belongs to God. Zane scrambled for mental footing. But it's not her turn. Why schedule her to die prematurely? Again he was pushing Satan to confess the truth. Would he do it? If one must go early, in order that 100 be fairly treated, would you do right by the 1 and wrong by the 100? Well, no, but death, I have analyzed the future course of man in some detail. I comprehend trends that might be considered too subtle for mortal minds. Not for your mind, of course. You are a perceptive person. But a detailed narration would become tedious. In essence, I perceive a nexus approximately 20 years hence that is crucial to the fate of the human species. By taking advantage of that particular situation, I can change the course of human history. I will be able to purge an enormous amount of evil with a minimum of disruption. Unfortunately, one well-intentioned but misguided person obstructs that opportunity. It grieves me to deal firmly with that person who is perfectly justified in her stand according to her more limited comprehension. But the justice of the many must take precedence over the justice of the one. The equation may seem cruel in the particular instance, and unfair in the specific case, but in the larger context, the values reverse. This is the reality. It is my eternal duty to honor. And Luna was that one. Were it not for that, Zane might have found himself persuaded. "Father of lies, I don't believe you." Still Satan took no offense. "You are correct to be cautious. I like your independent thinking. I am sure a person of your perspective will come to the appropriate conclusion. I doubt you can convince me to send the woman I love to eternity before her time." Satan shrugged. "Timing can be a matter of convenience, Death. Do you feel privileged to have had your own situation cynically manipulated by others, including the time and manner of your departure from your original life?" The evil one was bearing down harder. "I'm not really pleased about that," Zane admitted, knowing that honesty was by far the best course. He could hardly match Satan's proficiency in lying, even if he wanted to. Any lie, even a mild self-deception, would play into Satan's hands. But I think that in this circumstance it was the necessary— He paused, realizing the implication. The welfare of the one sacrificed for the benefit of the many. He was playing into the devil's hands anyway. "Circumstance makes puppets of us all," Satan said sympathetically. "You function excellently in your office. I can tell you that sincerely, though perhaps God would not. It has been decades, perhaps centuries, since a death has placed conscience above convenience, and the role is overdue for reinterpretation." Zane tried to resist his pleasure at this flattery, mistrusting its source. "I dare say it is bringing me rapidly closer to you." "Ho, ho, ho!" Satan laughed like a jolly Santa Claus. "Isn't that the irony? The rules are so fixed that those few who do the right thing must pay for it with their souls. God would jet green flame if he knew, but frankly, he's not paying attention." Zane was taken aback by this open denigration of God. But what else should he have expected from God's archenemy? "You say you're getting good souls in hell?" he asked, amazed. "And losing evil ones to heaven," Satan agreed, slapping his knee. "Gums up the works something awful. But that's the way of bureaucracy and ossified standards. Some poor souls always slip through the cracks." This was the father of lies, Zane reminded himself. All or nothing or any ratio between could be falsity. It was dangerous even talking to Satan, for soon the boundaries of good and evil became fuzzed by eloquent misleading. "I see you remain in doubt," Satan said, leaning forward with apparent sincerity. "This is quite understandable. Your associates have maneuvered to put you in an awkward position. You have problems in your office, and are inhibited by rules that have lost their relevance to the contemporary scene. Likewise, I, in my office. It behooves us to cooperate where our offices overlap. This can greatly facilitate our respective duties and benefit us both." "I see no benefit." "Oh, but you have not given yourself the chance to see it," Satan said smoothly. "Let me give you a tour of my domains." "A tour of hell? I don't—" "It can be arranged, Death. You have merely to depart your physical host for a time. You have my personal assurance that you will return in good order." "The assurance of the father of lies," Zane cried, repelled. "Now you're trying to get me into hell. I refuse to risk my soul that way." "A man who will not risk his soul to save that of the woman he loves perhaps does not deserve her love in return," Satan remarked. That stung. "I just don't care to risk it on a bad bet. I don't see that I need to examine your case at all, not personally in hell. What I want is a review of the merits of the scheduling of Luna's death. If you can arrange for the review to be soon, I'll welcome that." Satan rolled his eyes. "Have you ever tried to hurry a bureaucracy?" There was that. Anyway, I think I'll just sit tight right here until that review. Zane believed he had Satan over a barrel, for the review would surely expose evidence of Satan's cheating and free Luna from the sentence. "I am not certain you comprehend my problem," Satan said. "Hell is geared for a large turnover. Thousands of souls enter each hour for processing. You have abruptly stopped the flow. That gives my initiation cadre no work to do." "The respite should be good for them," Zane said, smiling unsympathetically. "They can sharpen their pitchforks or whatever." "On the contrary, those little devils must be kept occupied constantly. Who in hell finds work for idle devils to do?" Zane visualized idle devils rampaging in hell, overturning racks and littering torture chambers. That would certainly be a problem. "Consider this," Satan said. The television picture changed to the news report of an accident. An airplane had experienced heavy weather in a cold northern region and crashed in an isolated spot. 50 passengers were trapped inside. "These people are freezing to death," Satan said. "There is no hope of rescue, yet none of them can die while death remains on strike." The camera panned on the wreckage, then showed an interior view where several passengers had critical injuries and others were in dire straits. This was a no-survivors type of crash. "Do you really intend to let these victims suffer indefinitely, rather than free their souls for eternity?" Satan asked soberly. "Most of this batch is slated for heaven, so there is nothing to be gained by delay except undeserved misery." Zane hadn't considered that aspect. Had he been deliberately avoiding the obvious? Of course there would be horrendous suffering. Death was no burden to a terminally injured person, it was relief. He was the first person to defend the right of anyone to die on schedule. He had, technically, committed murder in the defense of that right. Now he was responsible for a worse denial than that performed by any hospital. Satan had struck at another vulnerability, with the acute perception of his evil nature. It was not one person suffering now, it was a multitude. Yet how many people would suffer eternally if Satan had his way? If one person, Luna, could be sacrificed to help 50 in a plane wreck, why couldn't 50 be sacrificed to help the entire world? Satan was putting pressure on him, and he had to withstand it. He had known it wouldn't be easy, but had underestimated the cunning ingenuity of the argument. "I deeply regret the suffering of these people," Zane said. "But it is your will, not mine, that precipitates it. The sooner my petition is considered and Luna is freed from her unfair sentence of early death, the better." "I believe the date of the hearing could be moved up," Satan said, as if it were an incidental matter. "Come, consider my case, and I will see that yours is considered." So the devil did have power to affect that matter, or so he was letting it be implied. "You are proffering a deal?" "I specialize in deals." "How can I trust you to honor any part of any deal you make?" "A deal not signed in blood is not worth the blood it's signed with," Satan said, grinning affably. "I refuse to sign in blood." "Nor are you required to. That was merely a medieval custom. The client's blood gave me the magic power to enforce the contract. Today, fingerprints or retina prints do just as well. But no contract of any nature can bind an incarnation, so that's irrelevant." Satan leaned forward, his handsome face radiating sincerity. "Merely appreciate the background rationale, Death. It is to my interest to persuade you to end your strike. It is to your interest to guarantee the welfare of your girlfriend. It is thus to our mutual interest to establish communication and complete understanding. Cheating does not facilitate this. If I go to hell and don't return, there'll be a new person to assume the office of death. That one, I'm sure, will be more amenable to your guidance." Satan smiled in wry agreement. You are quick to appreciate reality. But all you have to do is consult with fate, who arranges the details of transitions. No one else can do it. She will not, I suspect, deceive you on this matter. If you have her assurance that your transition will not be made at this time—" Zane wasn't sure about that, but thought it worth investigating. "If I visit Hell, listen to your spiel, and then turn it down, will you free Luna from her sentence?" "Of course not," Satan said indignantly. "I will merely seek some other avenue to achieve my objective." "Then what is the point of my tour?" "You might be persuaded. Then you could reap great reward and be eternally happy." "I can't be eternally happy unless I die," Zane pointed out. "By no means, Death. Your present office is eternal. Until I leave it." Satan's smile became slightly strained. "How may I reassure you, then?" "Free Luna." "You are being unreasonable. By your definition, if that concludes our business—" A faint halo of smoke formed about Satan's face, but he hung on to his smile. "Suppose we compromise. Compromise is an excellent route to Hell. If your tour of Hell does not convince you, you will free Luna," Zane finished firmly. Satan sighed. "I could have wished for a more responsive office holder, but I will free Luna." Was Satan lying? Probably. But Zane was just uncertain enough of his own position and power to try it. If Satan reneged, he would be proved to have bargained in bad faith, and Zane would have no further doubts. Meanwhile, Death still would not take Luna. He really had nothing to lose as long as he remained in the office. And that was the key. If he lost his own position— Yet Satan's barb about the worth of a man who would not risk his soul for love still stung. And so did Zane's own conscience. He should at least listen to the other side. "I'll consult with Fate." "I'll put her on," Satan said. Fate appeared on the television screen in her lovely young Clotho guise. "No," Zane said. "That could be your demon doing another imitation. I want this personal." "As you wish," Fate said. Smiling, she stepped out of the TV picture to stand before him. "The creatures of Hell who can manifest on Earth can assume any form physically, but not intellectually." She stretched a bright thread between her hands. "And no one but an incarnation can emulate an incarnation. This is your thread, Death. See, I can move you with it." She made a kink in the thread, and suddenly Zane was sitting on the floor. She straightened it again, and he found himself back in the easy chair. "I can spin it long or short, smooth or furry, thick or thin. As Lachesis, I can measure it to define your life." She was now the middle-aged form. "And as Atropos, I can cut it off." She became an old hag with a huge pair of scissors. "Enough!" Zane cried. "I accept your identity." "That's nice," she said, returning to Lachesis. "This deal the Infernal One proffers is legitimate, Death, at least to the extent of your survival. Your thread continues beyond this episode. Thereafter it becomes tangled. I cannot guarantee the tapestry far ahead when Satan draws on it." "I'll worry about thereafter, Zane said. "As you choose, Death," she said tightly, and he realized that she feared his survival meant he would be converted to Satan's side. That, more than anything else, satisfied him about her validity. "But watch yourself in Hell." "I shall. What about Luna's thread?" Fate drew out another thread from the air, inspecting it. "That, too, is tangled. Satan has promised to free her if I am not convinced by this tour." Fate squinted closely at the thread again. "No, I can't be sure of that. There's too much interference. You must be alert for loopholes. Did he say when?" "When?" "When he would free her, immediately or in 1 century. Zane's heart sank. "No." "When you choose," Satan said equably. "I don't trust that," Fate said. "He's as slippery as a greased eel, but I suppose you had better go to hell and see what you can see." "Maybe I should hire a guide," Zane joked weakly. "Do that," she agreed seriously. Suddenly it was not a joke. "Who might be a guide for a tour such as this? No living person could do it, and I don't know many dead people." He paused, remembering one. "Molly Malone, the ghost fishmonger, would she—" Fate's lips quirked ever so slightly with approval. "I know that gamine. She's one canny guttersnipe." "I really don't see why you should choose to complicate a simple private tour," Satan said. "Just what is Molly's standing in eternity?" Zane asked. "Obviously she doesn't reside in heaven or hell." "She is unattached," Fate said, "but most of her friends are in hell. Molly was unwilling to desert them when she died, but she was too good a girl to go below, so she's serving her term on the streets. Eventually she'll tire of this and allow herself to waft up to heaven, but meanwhile she can safely visit hell." "We have no use for her kind," Satan grumbled. "But you can't deny her visiting privileges," Zane said. "Because of her loyalty to some of those incarcerated. I want her with me there." "I will fetch her," Fate said, smiling covertly. The smoke about Satan increased, but he remained silent. In a moment the ghost appeared. "I hear you want to go on another sightseeing tour, Death," Molly said brightly. "But where's your date?" "Luna will never see hell," Zane said. "Satan seeks to convince me to let her die, and if she dies she will go to heaven, and if he can't convince me to take her, maybe he'll leave her alone." Molly glanced darkly at the Prince of Evil. "When hell freezes over," she muttered. Satan only smiled tiredly. He had heard that expression countless times. "You can't trust the Prince of Evil, Death. His minions lobby for legislation on Earth to promote liquor and guns, so that drunken drivers and hot-headed malcontents will send themselves and others to hell early." "On the contrary," Satan said, "I promote legislation to outlaw antisocial things like pornography and gambling." "Because that puts the police to work raiding bookstores and penny-ante card games instead of bearing down on crime in the streets," Molly came back hotly. "You don't want people inside their homes reading or entertaining themselves. You want them outside and restless and frustrated, stirring up real mischief." Zane realized that Molly, who had died young in the streets, had a personal grudge here. "Will you be my guide in hell, Molly?" he asked. "I mean, if you will come along and talk to your friends who are incarcerated there." She smiled brilliantly. "I'll be glad to, Death. His lowness always puts bureaucratic obstacles in my way when I want to see a friend. Maybe this time he won't be able to do that." "Then let's be on our way," Satan said savagely. He reached forward to push against his side of the TV screen, and it swung out, a glass door. "Come into my parlor." Molly extended her hand to Zane. "Just step out of your body, Death," she said. "You're your own client now." Zane took her hand, uncertain about this. There was a funny feeling, a kind of internal parturition, and he got up out of the easy-chair. He turned around and saw himself sitting there as if asleep or dead. His soul had departed his body. "It's strange at first," Molly reassured him, "but you get used to it in a decade or so. Come on." She drew him toward the open TV set. They stepped through together without difficulty, for animated souls were highly malleable. Zane didn't feel at all thin or translucent. The way the souls he handled were, he seemed quite solid to himself. Now they stood in a kind of furnace room, with open fires burning in a ring around them, smoke billowing up to obscure whatever ceiling there was. The air was hot. "Welcome to hell, Death," Satan said, extending his hand. It was red with fine scales, and the fingernails were talons. Zane hesitated, but then went ahead and accepted the hand. It was best to keep this as polite as possible. The hand was hot, but not burning. "No place like the present," the Prince of Evil said briskly. His head, too, was more pronounced from this close vantage. His horns were larger and brighter than they had seemed before. Canine teeth gleamed before his thin lips, and his hair resembled a ripple of flame. "These cursed souls tend the central heating plant of hell, performing useful labor while expiating their burdens of sin." Zane looked at the people. Some had shovels that they used to put coal on the fires. The heat where they worked was terrible, but they wore asbestos aprons to shield their bodies from the worst of it. Zane knew they were souls with very little physical substance, but since he was in soul form himself at the moment, they seemed substantial. "What's the point?" he asked. "I realize hell has to be heated, but you could set up an automatic conveyor belt for the coal." "These are the souls of people who abused their status in life," Satan explained. "They had responsible positions in industry, overseeing the heating plants of manufacturing companies, apartment buildings, and such. Instead of striving for efficiency and comfort for their clients, they exploited them, refusing to modernize, though they knew people suffered as a result. Now they expiate that sin by laboring under the primitive conditions they forced on others." Zane studied the laborers. His apartment on Earth, before he became Death, had been intermittently cold in winter because, he suspected, the landlord was fattening his profit margin by skimping on heating fuel. Zane could appreciate Satan's rationale. "How do they expiate their sin?" he asked. "Do they have to shovel a certain number of tons of coal, or what? How long does it take, and what happens to them when they've paid their debt?" "Excellent questions," Satan said, glowing with more than human animation. "The term of penance varies with the individual. Roughly, each soul must labor until it has suffered the same amount as it inflicted on others during its life. That can take time. And, of course, some souls are incorrigible. It is not merely the labor but the attitude that counts. The soul must sincerely repent its prior evil. Eventually each soul will be purified by suffering, and will at last qualify for release to heaven." "So souls aren't condemned to hell for eternity?" Zane asked, surprised. Satan issued his pleasant laugh again. "Of course not. Hell is merely the ultimate reform institution where the cases too difficult for purgatory are handled. A truly evil or indifferent person cannot be cured by gentleness. Here in hell we have the mechanisms to straighten out even the most crooked souls. I assure you, by the time any soul qualifies for heaven, it has become quite gentle. I am a perfectionist. I will free no soul before its time." And Satan's countenance assumed an infernally noble aspect. Zane remembered that Satan was reputed to be a fallen angel. Maybe some angelic element remained in him. "But what about the bureaucratic errors?" Zane asked. "Honest mistakes are possible." "No, not when I'm in charge. I can guarantee absolutely that not one defective soul has been sent from hell to heaven." Molly had been poking around by herself. Now she returned to Zane. "I don't know any of these folk. Let's take a look at the Ireland section." But already Satan was showing the way to another region. He opened a door in air, and they stepped through to a foggy, gloomy region crowded with people garbed in rags. Men, women, and children of every race plodded along a barren plain. Each was gaunt, and some were emaciated. All stared unwaveringly at the ground. "These are the wasteful," Satan explained. "They threw out good food unused, knowing that others in the world were starving. Now they are hungry themselves. They squandered money. Now they have only what they can find lying in the street, the refuse of others. They destroyed good clothing in the name of frivolous fashion. Now they have only bad clothing, which they value more than all the garments of life. They must save in death as much as they wasted in life. And their resources are meager here. Again Zane was impressed. He had once approached a paper towel dispenser in a non-magic public lavatory. He had distrusted magic sanitary facilities, as some used the refuse to fashion voodoo dolls, and that could be a literal pain in the posterior. Only to see the man ahead of him snatch the last 3 sheets and throw them away almost unused. He had been furious at that callous, anonymous waster, but had not spoken up because the man had been large and aggressive. Now Zane felt a kind of vindication. Such people certainly needed to be punished. "You see, hell performs a necessary service," Satan said smoothly. "We would not want wasteful louts littering heaven." "I don't know anybody here either," Molly muttered. "I think this is a showcase section, not the real inferno." "Why don't you go seek out someone you do know?" Satan suggested. "I had understood you were along to guide death, but if you insist on mixing in your personal business—" "Let's go next to the Irish showcase," the ghost said rebelliously. "I have many more enlightened sets," Satan said. "There is little point in subjecting ourselves to the abuse of the unmitigated tempers of Ireland." "Oh, is that so?" Molly exclaimed, showing her own unmitigated temper. Satan glanced about as if seeing something invisible to the others. "For example, Hell's Kitchen." He opened a door on a huge room filled with fat chefs who were baking and cooking and mixing drinks. The odors of fresh foods were almost overpoweringly strong, making Zane hungry though he had recently eaten. "Try an aperitif," the Prince of Evil said, lifting a sparkling glass from a tray an elegant waiter brought and proffering the drink to Zane. "Don't touch it," Molly cried. "Anyone who eats or drinks anything in hell can never escape it." Satan's mouth stretched down in affected sadness. "I had thought such superstition was beneath you, fishwife. I have no need to trap people in hell. They come to me because their souls are burdened with sin." "What about Persephone and the 6 pomegranate seeds?" Molly demanded. "I will thank you to leave my private life out of this," Satan snapped, and small sparks radiated from the tips of his horns. "She wanted to stay. The seeds were merely a pretext to satisfy her image for her domineering mother." "And what's all this fancy food for?" Molly asked, showing her Irish stubbornness. "You never feed it to any of my friends who are imprisoned here, I'm sure. I've visited here before, you know." "You have visited limited regions before, Snippet," Satan told her. "You have not seen the complete hell or comprehended any part of its purpose." "That's my complaint," she said. "You're hiding something, foul fiend. You refuse to tell what the food is for." Curls of smoke rose from Satan's reddening hide. "For the cadre, of course, slut. They receive privileged treatment. The finest gourmet food, beverages, entertainment." He gestured, and a chorus line appeared. Shapely, nude girls kicking their legs in unison. "I would be happy to provide this service for you in Purgatory, Death. My cooks and girls are able to go that far." "I already have a staff at the Death Mansion," Zane said. "Ah, but not a staff like this. You have never experienced the delicacies these cooks generate. Not Bacchus himself ever feasted like this. And my personal tailor will create for you a suit that Solomon in all his evanescent glory could not match. And for your nocturnal entertainment, the queen of love and sex, Isis herself, shall attend." "The old serpent proffers a bribe," Molly snapped. "Who needs Isis that slattern when he has a woman like Luna?" That brought Zane forcefully back to reality. He had been somewhat dazzled by the movements of the dancing girls, but of course Luna was all he desired. How fortunate that Molly was along. "True," Satan said mildly, though the heat of his body now clothed him in steam. "Still, there are other forms of entertainment for the discriminating person. Hell has the finest library of eternity, completely unexpurgated. Many of its collected works have been written after the authors' deaths, and are available only in the infernal literary annex. The same for paintings and music. Here, listen to Chopin's latest on the piano. Beautiful piano music flooded the chamber, its exquisite touch lifting Zane's spirit. "Come down from there," Molly said, catching Zane's leg. Startled, he looked down. He was floating toward the ceiling. Since he was currently in spirit form with no material body to weight him down, he had been literally lifted by the lovely music. "Why offer me this?" Zane asked as his feet returned to the floor. "I'm only here to hear your presentation." "Merely a gesture of amity," Satan said. "I happen to enjoy doing things for my friends." "Death is no friend of yours, old Nick," Molly said. Again Satan smiled. It seemed to be his protective reaction. "Death is a business associate, of course. That is no reason for negative relations." "I want to see the Ireland section," Molly insisted. Zane sighed. He could appreciate Satan's irritation with this single-mindedness. "We'd better go there, Lucifer." The devil seemed like a sensible fellow, but there was no sense getting Molly upset. "We can check in on her friends, then see the rest of hell." He hadn't changed his mind about Luna, but realized it would be nice if he could in some fashion accommodate Satan's worthy purpose. "Naturally," Satan said, with deific grace. He opened a new door in air, and they stepped through to an Irish city slum. It was chill, cruel winter. Snow swirled in the air, and dirty slush coated the filthy street. Peasants dressed in heavy outdoor garb were cleaning rubbish and fish heads from the gutters, using inadequate shovels and brooms. "These were litterers," Satan said. "Now they labor all year round to recover as much litter as they strewed in life, and to make the street as clean as it was before they desecrated it. Unfortunately, the litter keeps reappearing." Molly snooped around, looking for her friends. This time she found one. "Sean!" she cried. "I haven't seen you in 100 years." The man paused in his labor. "Sweet Molly Malone, when did you die? I never thought I'd see you here. You don't look a lifetime older." "That's because I died early of a fever and took my youth and beauty with me to the grave." The old man gazed at her appreciatively. "Sure, and you did that, girl. You were just a little bit of a thing, prettiest waif on the street. I thought sure you'd be a grandmother by the time you were 16. Molly smiled. "I tried, but life ended too soon. I thought my soul would be damned to hell after what that honey-tongued man did to me." "Not your soul, dear child. You were the petunia in the onion patch, sure, always ready with a favour to them worse off than you. Sure, it's a shame you died before your time." "How are they treating you, Sean?" she inquired. "Well, it's not fun, as you can see. We clean and clean, but the mess never ends. And at times like this it's so cold." "Haven't you expiated your burden of sin yet? After all, you've been in hell longer than you lived on earth, Sean, and you were never a really bad man, just a litterer." Sean scratched his head. "I don't know, lass. They keep the accounts, and somehow I never seem to gain. I must have a really incorrigible nature." "Here, your glove is torn," Molly said solicitously. "Let me fix it." She reached for the man's hand. "Oh, no, that's all right, miss," he said quickly, snatching his hand away. "I'll get by. I've got to get back to work anyway." He resumed shoveling ineffectively at the slush. "If you're sure," Molly said, concerned. "As you can see," Satan said with another smile, "we are tough but fair here in hell. People who refuse to reform in life are hard to reform in death, but persistence and consistency eventually pay off." "Yes, I can see that," Zane agreed. "It certainly seems reasonable." He was interrupted, for Molly had stumbled and collided with him, shoving him into one of the Irish workers. Her ghost form was completely solid to his spirit form. Zane's hand slapped bare flesh before he recovered his balance. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, apologizing to the man he had struck. "I lost my footing." "The gutter snipe was the clumsy one," Satan muttered. "It's all right," the man said gruffly, drawing his patched overcoat around him more tightly. "Just clear out and let me work." Satan opened a new door in air, and they stepped through to a comfortably furnished living-room suite. "So you see there is no point in disrupting the system," he said. "I agree," Zane said. "Yet I also don't see why I should take Luna out of turn. I think I'm on the fence about this." "By all means," Satan said readily. "I am sure when you consider all aspects you will see it my way." He opened still another door, and Zane and Molly stepped through to Zane's own death-house living room. The door swung closed behind them, becoming the television screen. Zane walked to his still body, positioned himself, and carefully sat down in his own lap. He sank into his flesh, reuniting with his host. In a moment he opened his eyes, solid again. It was a relief. "I will send my minions to see to your comfort, Death," Satan said from the screen. Then he winked out, and the regular news program returned. Chapter 12